In terms of sponsors, I will be thanking the sponsors as we go through the day. We've got an incredibly tight program. So to begin with, I would like to invite John Carey MLA to the speaker, to the podium. John is the Minister for Local Government and Housing. He was the founder of the very first town teams, the Beaufort St Network, and went on to become Mayor of Vincent in 2013. This is a pathway and a journey. In 2017, John was elected as the member for Perth in the state government, and in 2021 became Minister for Local Government and Housing. What an incredible portfolio that you now have. As an elected official, he's made innovation part of his mandate. And today, we welcome him to the Town Teams Conference and thank the state government for their continued support. Could you please put your hands together for John Carey?
How do I move?
Just this big green button.
Okay, I love you.
Fantastic. We will give you 1 minute,
Yep.
and if I stand up.
No worries. Thank you. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I really want to thank that warm welcome that we received this morning. It's fantastic to be here. And I am a passionate believer. As you can see, I love Lego. But I'm a passionate believer in the town team movement. It is a transformational movement across now, not just Western Australia, but Australia. And I do have a personal investment because a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, back in around 2007, I set up the first town team in Australia, the Beaufort St Network. And at the time, I was an ordinary resident who looked at Beaufort Street and saw a lot of potential. I had no commercial interests. I lived in Northbridge, so I didn't even live in the hood, but I loved it. And one day, I just spoke to a few shopkeepers and thought, let's do something. So I did a half-assed graphic design, flyer dropped myself personally about 750 homes and the businesses. And at that first meeting, we had about 40 people turn up to the Beaufort Street Merchant. And from there, we developed an organisation, and it was new. It was different because it said, we don't want to do just residents or businesses or just property owners. We don't want to be naysayers. We want to have a vision for our area. We want to make real change. And that is where the Beaufort St Network grew from. And from there, I think we did achieve extraordinary things. Now, like many of you in this room, when I first tried to set that network up, I experienced this. So ironically, the council, which I would become mayor, when I said we're establishing a network and we needed a bit of funding, they actually sent out a staff member to door knock all the businesses and then reported to council that no one knew us. That was the power of the City of Vincent then. We said, get stuffed, we're proceeding. And we've got this idea called a Beaufort Street Festival. And we did a few things and they didn't work, but we did the Beaufort Street Festival in the first year, remembering these were volunteers, businesses and residents, and we got about 20 to 30,000 people. And because we persisted and we grew it, it became to the point where it became the largest street festival in Western Australia. And ultimately, the City of Vincent went, I think we might change our tune, and provided then significant funding for this event, but also other events and other change. But I do want to say there is another part of the story, because places and towns and cities and main streets are cyclical. And of course, the Beaufort Street Festival stopped, and then it did go through a downturn. And I don't want to kid you. There are so many factors at play, but I'm happy to say that the Beaufort Street Network persists and it continues. And in fact, now we're seeing this year, property owners and others, there is now a revitalisation of the town centre. But that is the cyclical nature. And what I do know is that more than ever, we actually do need town teams. And in COVID, I mean, it is extraordinary that we sit here when we see our families and friends in New South Wales and in Victoria. But what COVID showed us last year was social connection is the critical and defining factor that gives us that well-being, that gives us that sense of hope and optimism when things are tough. It is that social connection. And of course, ultimately, that is what town teams are about. It's not about a mural. It's not about, improving a streetscape. Well, that's all really important. And it makes you feel good. Ultimately, this is a movement about social connection, and that we reach out to those who may be isolated in our community, or people who may never have been involved in a community organisation before, and they come together as part of a positive, life-changing organisation. And so I love this, and I know that the town team uses it regularly, and yes, that's me hosting a dog show because I love dogs with the Beaufort St Network. But it is the imagination, the sweat, the enthusiasm, and the efforts of the people that are the greatest resource that any place has. Now, I know that there are many different ingredients, and certainly, but I do believe that town teams are that persistent voice for change. And I want to say that I've continued it. As the Mayor of Vincent, I help establish 4 town teams. So the Beaufort Street, I personally named actually all 4 of them, so don't blame me for the names. But we established 4 town teams with dedicated precincts, each with their action plans and each with funded action plans. And as the member for Perth in my first 4 years, and I really believe in this model, I helped establish 2 more. West Perth Local and Northbridge Common. And that was a free sundowner that I funded, which had pizzas, amazingly, Pinot and wine does get a lot of people out. And from that, I asked for a group of people to stand up and become Northbridge Common. Now, we know there is software, or the community, and the hardware, which is the physical structure that make a place. But certainly, there are challenges in getting, I think, 4 key ingredients together. Now, we've talked about the community, and in some ways I find that is the easiest proposition. It's harder with the other elements. Now, I believe that the second most important element of any place is unique small business. That is a driver and attractor for people to any destination. And what I know is it's difficult being a small business, and I just use this as an example, and it's probably a go at all levels of bureaucracy. But when I ask people, what do you see here? People go, oh, that's a nice bakery, pot plant, and a seat. But for a small business in some local governments, that's a pain in the arse. That's approval for the pot. That's approval for the seat. They may need public liability. It's absurd. Because what's the added benefit of this? It's about vitalisation of streetscapes. And so this is the challenge that we face. And I'm proud as a state government that we are driving reform, that we're abolishing change of use so that you can have flexible uses. And as the local government minister, I'm looking at standardisation of our fresco laws and other red tape issues. But small business is critical. And, it shouldn't be the case. We should try to liberate small business to be able to be the best they can to add to that sense of place. And, people ask me, why do local governments and bureaucracies act like this? Well, because often it feels much easier and safer, and yes, this is an excuse because I love dogs and I just put pictures in that I love, and it's dogs in blankets, so how can you hate that? But what I'm saying is actually it's much easier, just keep doing the same thing. It feels cosy. There's no risk, there's no challenges. It's far more frightening to try to do change. But we do need that third key player, local government, to step forward and to say, actually, we are going to lose control. It's okay we don't totally own this, because we know when the local community owns it, it's far more powerful, meaningful, and likely to be successful. But it's hard to give things up. And the last area is property owners. It is the hardest challenge because, particularly in some of our inner city areas, there could be international owners. There's real estate agents who might not give a rat's ass. So I understand that property owners are one of the most difficult areas sometimes. But in others, town teams are being funded, sponsored, driven by property owners who do see the real interests. I want to talk about my tips because I could give you spiels about what the government is doing, and I'm sure you would all probably after a few minutes yawn, but I want to give you my insights and tips about what I believe town teams need to remember when you're starting out and you're battling. The first is start small and try to take the easiest path. You don't have to change the world overnight. No one expects you to, and it can be quite exhausting. So do small things first. That's okay. Again, I like Lego and Star Wars, but taking small steps, whether it's window installations, it's holding a community forum, whatever, it doesn't have to be the Beaufort Street Festival in one day. And I know this, I take this photo when I did travel, I was in LA, it's a pink wall, you go, yep, okay. But actually what I found fascinating was it was a major destination for those Instagrammers and influencers. So this shows you the simplicity in ideas. Or closing a street like in Leederville, where actually they didn't get food trucks in, they closed it off, there was kids' activities, and it worked. It actually wasn't a mammoth proposal. I do have one thing to say though. If I see any local government put in one of these, and this is the problem, we must not confuse creating change and positive change with just replicating ideas that almost now become meaningless. And I understand these make great tables for seagulls, but I actually don't see many in active use. I do think it's also okay to make mistakes. George Lucas made a terrible one with Jar Jar Binks, if you know the character. But it's all right that you make mistakes. And I say to local government, because a town team doesn't get everything right, doesn't mean you say, I walk away, we're not funding this, you're condemned. That is the wrong approach. You are allowed to make mistakes. That's the part of being a community organisation. Don't just talk to the same people. We've heard about relationships, but don't just keep talking to the same inner little circle. You must reach out, try the property owner. If you never know what you might get. But the other thing is, get stuff done. You can't take everyone on the journey with you. There are going to be naysayers. There's going to be people who always say, you can't do this, you can't do that. So accept. This is not trying to get consensus with everyone in a community or a street. Get the doers together. Make that positive change. And also find other champions. Find those who are prepared, perhaps, to stand above the block for you. And there are good local governments with good local government councillors or even staff that can help you navigate the path. Also make sure and you shouldn't always ask for trouble, but my point is this, if you don't ask, you don't get. And as a member, a mayor, and as a minister, it often surprises me that people come to meet me and they don't have the ask. What is it you want? Where is the pitch? Let me know. Tell me what you're after. It's not just a feel-good meeting. You're busy, I'm busy. Let's get the stuff done. And ultimately, it's about staying positive. It is critical that town teams don't get into the politics and don't get into the negativity. They don't become the naysayers, because then you will attract those types of people. You must be a positive, changing organisation. And with 1 minute to go, give me one extra minute, I do want to say this. You are an incredible movement. Be really proud about what you're achieving in your local communities. Keep your chins up. I speak to so many town teams. For some reason, they keep sending me to meet town teams as the minister. But I often meet town teams that say, oh, we got a knockback, we did this, you know. Keep it up. Keep going, because you are part of an incredible, positive, life-changing movement for Western Australia, and you really are making change in your local communities. Thank you very much.
John Carey, what a breath of fresh air.